What's up, everyone? Welcome to the first episode of Agency U podcast. Gilberto and I are super pumped to bring a different format of content to you guys. So if you are an agency owner, tune in for future episodes about tactical topics or bringing on a guest agency that's absolutely crushing it and much, much more. So in the first video, we wanted to do a quick intro to our story, meet Gilberto, me, myself a little bit, talk about how we grew our agency and scaled that up. So tune into this episode and be sure to subscribe on all platforms. We'd be super grateful if you are in fact an agency owner and you are looking for more value, that you would check out this podcast and stay tuned and look out for more episodes coming out. So thanks for watching, and hopefully you guys like the first episode. So let's get into it.
Left my agency job and I was with 2K in my bank account.
2020 we did like 750, and then next year we did like $1.8 million.
Once I started bringing on 2 closers, that's where we shot up to 100K a month.
6 figures a month. Like, what do you think were some of the biggest challenges at that mark? What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Agency U podcast, first ever. We're super pumped that you're here. We really want to make this one nice and casual, introduce ourselves to the podcast a little bit. And if you found this podcast, maybe you're an agency owner, maybe you saw some of our YouTube videos, maybe you found us on Instagram, maybe you just randomly came across it. And really the intention behind it is just to add value, to share our story, to talk all things agencies. We both grew our agencies to 7 figures for multiple years in a row, built a team, blah, blah, blah. And there's a lot of learning lessons that we can hopefully share with you guys so that you guys can shortcut as you're listening to it. And my name is Austin. I founded a company called Brantegic in 2018. It is a creative agency. Started with just myself as a freelancer, kind of burning out, and realized I needed to make some moves or else I was just going to be on a hamster wheel and kind of just scraping by every single month, and decided to hire people. And we grew pretty quickly to about $1.8 million in 2 years. And that allowed us to get a cool studio, a cool office space, a bunch of cool employees and team members, and do a bunch of cool work, a bunch of cool jobs for people. And now just recently hired our CEO, Mark Robinson, who was our COO and who literally was an account manager with us when we first started. So that's a little bit about me, and we'll get into more of the story here later into the podcast. And then I'm going to kick it to the co-host and co-founder of Agency U, actually, Gilberto. What's up, man?
Yeah. So my name is Gilberto. Grew my agency to 7 figures in the mortgage niche. I have a lead gen / recruiting agency, and pretty much started very similar to Austin, 2018. Bank account, like just completely like uncertain about what's to come, and just took the leap of faith, and all turned out. We scaled up to 160K a month, have a whole team of setters and closers, and kind of just grew from there. And big focus for me has been like really just building out like sales and lead gen systems. So kind of the counterpart to Austin, and just kind of sharing everything that I know over the last 6 years, taken well over 1,000 sales calls, generated thousands of appointments, and sharing what's working now for scaling agencies.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think it'd be good before we get into it to introduce ourselves and maybe share the journey of, like, okay, you say 7 figures, you say 160K a month, you say all these cool numbers that make you sound really cool and make me sound really cool. But like, what is the journey? Like how did you get there? And then how did I get there? And I think it'd be really insightful for agency owners to hear, because I think there's power in testimony. There's power in hearing other people, how they did it. And like, that is a big influence, right? Like, I think it's easy to see
100%.
people on Instagram and like, or think that you're never going to be able to achieve something, but it's happening all around us. And I think where there's no secret sauce that we did, right? So we'd love to kick to you. Like, let's start with you, and then I can share a little bit about me. Like, what was your journey from inception? You said that you started at an agency to getting that maybe first 10K, to hiring a team member, to scaling past the $100,000 a month mark, which is a lot of responsibility, by the way.
100%. Yeah. So I had actually started when I was like my last year in university. I'd actually seen a video from a guy named Alex Becker. One of the things I was like looking up make money online stuff. And one of the things he said was like, if you guys want to have your own online business, like go out and find a marketing agency or whatever you want to do and go be an intern for them and learn the ropes. Basically, you're getting paid to learn skills. So that's exactly what I did. I went out there, found a marketing agency, and kind of used like what would be my prospecting strategies to find the agency. So just started prospecting on LinkedIn, found one that was looking for my skill set, and started working with them. After about a year, kind of started working with them on like social media, running ads, a bit of like sales and prospecting, but a lot of like Facebook ads, social media. After about a year, I was like, hey, I'm ready to take the leap. So left the job and took a very like probably one of the scariest steps is like that first jump. So I took a leap of faith, had enough for probably like a month and a half of like living expenses, and started hitting the ground running, prospecting, hitting up at the time as loan officers on LinkedIn, which at the time worked really well. Within 2 weeks, got my first client, and then from there, kind of just started scaling up because I saw there was a need for my service, especially in this niche, and then just started scaling up, doing some cold calling, doing LinkedIn, a lot of cold calling, a lot of emails being sent out, and from there, kind of took me a while. I eventually got to 10K a month. After I got to 10K a month, that's
Do you have a
where
team to help with fulfillment, or what were you like? What were you?
10K a month was literally like, I find it's literally just like having one skill set that you're like selling your time for. And it's just all grind. Like
So you were doing
having,
all the fulfillment too as you
yeah,
were grinding. Really nice.
I was doing, yeah, pretty much everything at some point, like around like 10K a month, like right around there. I started bringing on a VA, virtual assistant. So $4 VA, who's like still with me, by the way.
No way.
Shout out to Depu. And he was like my first VA, like killer dude. So basically he would do a lot of like the back end stuff in terms of like just helping me with mundane tasks, that I was just doing repetitive stuff so I could focus on sales calls. Once I started bringing him on, I started closing more. Once I started closing more, then I started bringing him full time. Once I started doing that, I just started bringing on like more VAs, built out that. This is the point where I started building out my call center of bringing on more VAs. So I got really good at like managing VAs, hiring them, finding really good ones. And then once I got to around 20K a month, I brought on a client success manager, which was like one of the best hires. Also a guy that's still with me, and one of the best hires that I've had. Trained him up. And then once I brought him on, I got to 50K a month. So again, I was just really focusing on client acquisition. And yeah, just that's the point where I hit a glass ceiling. Like I just could not scale past 50K a month. And that's where I started bringing on a closer. So my first closer, Branson. And that one was a bit tough because like really bringing on like setters and closers and training them up, it's like such a skill in itself. Such a skill, like managing people. I know you, Austin, like you're like know all about that. Like you had also like a team of 20, 25 that you manage. So with setters and closers, it's like one of those things that it really was like a skill that I had to really harness, on like training them, onboarding, interviewing, like all these things. And then once I started bringing on 2 closers, that's where we shot up to 100K a month. And then from there brought on more closers and got up to 160K a month.
Nice.
And that's the journey. Yeah.
And the offer, so the offer that you scaled to 160K per month, what was the offer?
So it's helping mortgage loan officers and mortgage brokers get referral partners. So basically doing like outbound prospecting. So basically the way that I would get loan officers was like what I would do for them as well. A lot of them like struggle with like not having prospecting systems in place. And so that's basically what we did for them. And then eventually I added a back end offer, so we could increase the lifetime value, and we got it up to adding on recruiting because we saw there was another need in the marketplace, and then adding some lead gen services on the back end. But our front end offer was the referral partnership stuff, and then with 2 upsells on the back end.
So basically you'd have like the VAs or whoever setting appointments for mortgage people in like DMs, LinkedIn, whatever, however you're doing it.
Yeah. So mix of calls
This is all
and
out.
like LinkedIn DMs. Yeah.
That's sick. Crazy.
Yeah. Wild journey, man.
Yeah. I mean, you did it completely opposite of me. I mean, I like for me, it was I was a real estate agent and I was marketing for myself. I was creating content, creating videos for myself, creating house tours, talking to home buyers, whatever, first time home buyers. And it was great and all. But what came from it was people kept asking me for help. How are you making those videos? Like, how are you marketing yourself so well? How are you building such a cool brand? And I was like, yeah, you just do this, like very second nature to me. And then, and then eventually somebody was like, hey, can I like pay you to help, like you help me out? And I was like, uh, what? Like you can like get paid to do this stuff? This is just like social media. Cause at the time it wasn't like agencies
Yeah.
weren't that big and like it was kind of like up and coming. There wasn't really like it wasn't like a model to it, you know?
Yeah.
And then met somebody locally here that was an agency owner doing like lead gen stuff. And then he explained his model and like saw him crushing it. And I was like, dang, like this is actually something. So got a couple of clients while I was like side hustling real estate. Um, or while I was got a couple of clients as a side hustle as I was in real estate. Because I didn't like love real estate because you gotta like open the door, you gotta deal with emotions, you gotta deal with the realtors, you gotta write the contracts, you gotta run around. It's like not a lifestyle that I didn't think I wanted. And then things just got busy, and then I was able to replace the real estate income, which was okay at the time. I was kind of doing them tandem, and then yeah, I just got slammed as a freelancer essentially with people wanting the demand. So I like for me it was I had a skill that people wanted. So it was like the supply and demand. Like the demand for my skill was very high, and like I was the only one that could do it. So and I'm such a yes man. So I took on way too many people, was super burnt out, doing everything, like not hanging out with friends, like losing my life essentially because I was just working all the time. And then I was like, okay, I need to like figure out how to scale this and grow this. And this was me maybe doing like $10,000 to $15,000 a month. And I was like, okay, I need to like hire somebody. I was like, I have no idea how to do this. Hired a graphic designer off of Upwork.com. She was great. She was with us for like 3 years, became a senior graphic designer actually. And then kind of just started looking at everything I was doing and figured out, okay, if I'm making $15,000 a month, who can I hire for $1,000 a month to help me out? Okay, cool. Videographer. Okay, let me hire a videographer. Okay, let me hire a video editor. And then I just started buying back my time because like I think the quickest way to get more time in the day to go do more things is to go hire people. Like as an agency owner, and so many people are
100%.
maybe cheap or they're like stingy or they just aren't like seeing it that way, unfortunately. But like to me, it's like if I want more time, I'm just going to go hire more people, and so I can go generate more revenue where the value is actually needed for the business. So did that, and then finally landed on Peter as a videographer, probably doing like we were doing like 25K a month. Peter as a videographer started with me. He was a freelancing as well, but wanted to be on a team after going through like 4 videographers because that's a very hard person to hire. Mark joined the team. He was met him at church. He was like doing like a corporate job and then side hustling Brain Teacher as an account manager. And then finally it was like, okay, I'm going to buy in. I'm going to get bought in and I'm going to join the team. And he joined in like February of 2020, 2019 or something like that. And then, yeah, once I had like the core 3-4 people on the team, that's when we really started to take off. So we had the Mark who's doing like account management, Peter who's doing like the videography and then the editing as well. And then we just freaking like took off from doing what were we doing? 7. So we did like in 2020 we did like 750, and then the next year we did like $1.8 million in, so we like more than doubled just from like having a high demand skill essentially, and then like packaging it really well and making it really seamless on the fulfillment. Like that was pretty much what helped us. And then like how we were doing client acquisition was very much like brand. I would go speak at events and like word of mouth and grew organically that way. We got like an office and like we got a studio and stuff like that. So it's a different client acquisition model, but it worked really well. Definitely more like fulfillment kind of based in like service, but yeah, so then we grew to a team of like 20, 25, got a studio, 7,500 square feet. The niches that we've really served well is like real estate, mortgage as well, e-com, kind of all over the place. So
Yeah, I think we had some clients that overlapped.
yeah, Justice, my guy Justice, shout out Justice.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah. So, but yeah,
Yeah, one thing that
that's kind of the journey.
like stood out from what you just said right now is like one parallel that I see between yourself and like my agency is like we both found like almost like our place in the niche. Like at the time that you had started, like the real like the short form content stuff like wasn't like all over the place, right? Like in
Totally.
2020, I was like maybe just like taking off.
Totally.
And then the same thing with like our stuff. I had
We were
started
doing
with
like
like
IGTV.
you said
back in,
what?
we were doing like IGTV back in the day. Hook wasn't
Yeah,
even like a hook back in the day.
yeah. And then with our stuff, like it was no one was doing like the referral partnership stuff. There was like maybe coaches like telling them, hey, go get realtor partners, but
Yeah.
there was no one like at scale like going out and like doing it for them. Like at least at the scale that we did. So I found that to be interesting. It's like having that in-demand skill and like picking your place in the market with like something that no one else can do, and then just scaling it up, putting
I think
people in place.
for sure. And I think like the tricky part is that as a leader of an agency, like if you're an agency owner listening to this, it's like the world of social media, the world of sales, the world of media in general, prospecting, whatever it could be, moves so quickly that you as a leader need to think about what's the next best thing that's going to serve the clients well, because the offer that you're running right now is probably not the offer that's going to serve the client 5 years from now, because something new is going to come out, something people are going to catch on. Like I just made a YouTube video this morning, like our short form content agency is dying because everybody's doing short form content now and it's become so saturated, and you see the same fonts with the same colors. It's like it's not as valuable as it was when the skill wasn't like the supply of the skill wasn't that high. So it's like you as a leader of an agency need to always be like thinking 10 steps ahead and like thinking, okay, how do I innovate? How do I innovate this? How do I value stack this, etc.? Or else like you're gonna be stuck or you're gonna fail. Like that's what's gonna happen.
Yeah, I think my offers definitely evolved over the years. I think it's funny that you said that. Literally, someone I had talked to like years ago, he had a 7-figure agency. I was talking to him in the chiropractic space, and dude was doing like really well. I think he still is now, and he was telling me like, hey, like your offer, literally what you said, like your offer is not what it's gonna be like 3 years from now, right? Like you have to like constantly like innovate and find like other ways like that you can like trump competition, and then just like think like what's going to be the next thing, what is the market, like what's the market going to want in like 2 years,
Totally.
and then provide a solution for that.
So true. Yeah. I was just talking to Mark, who's now the CEO of Brain Teaching, about that. I was like, dude, gotta like position it, gotta think differently about it, or else it's you're done. You're done for. It's like
Yeah,
for your offer,
exactly.
it's not like what did they do? Like direct mail isn't gonna work for your offer for getting referral partners or sending handwritten notes. Whereas maybe that worked really well in 1997, you know,
Yeah,
or
like 2000,
scaling
yeah, like the
coffee meetings.
2000s and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like you can only go on so many coffee meetings, or you could triple down and like do LinkedIn. Okay, now you're going to do Instagram. Now you're going to do text messages, whatever the next best thing is to serve the client to
What do you
achieve.
think is the next big thing? Like, I feel like the agency space has gone through like waves. Whereas like first it was like when we had started like the whole like social media posting or whatever. Then after that it was like lead gen agencies. And then like now it kind of seems like there's different way like short form content agencies. What do you think is kind of like that next step, that next kind of wave in the agency space?
I think it's like what would I do? Like I
Or
think
like kind of what do you see? I mean, I have a couple ideas that I've seen, but I'm curious to know like
yeah,
for you, like what do you think is that next thing that's kind of popping up for agencies?
I think it's like the like kind of coupling you and I in a way, where it's like the brand plus the sales. Because I think more and more people are becoming more savvy when it comes to like reading on client acquisition stuff. But if you're just going 100% brand, it's going to be really challenging to get a result. So it's almost like, okay, I'm going to build your brand and I'm going to set up appointment setters to do client acquisition for your target niche. Like that's what I would say is like a super solid, effective way to grow a business right now, especially in like a personal brand space or maybe like a local business, is coupling the two, the brand and the lead gen together as a one size fits all. Like I thought about like AI agencies and stuff like that. I just don't like, I think that's like where my head went first. Like, what is the next thing? And I'm like, I don't know if that's going to be a thing yet, but yeah. How about you?
Yeah, I agree for that one. Definitely the first one that came to mind was like the AI agencies, just because like Chat GPT, like anytime a new technology comes up, it's like the thing that like kind of sets the next wave. Like if you remember, like during when we had started, like let's say 2013, 2014, that's where people started like catching on to like Facebook ad agencies and all that stuff. But it was because like finally like Facebook rolled out like the ad platform and all that kind of stuff. And so then I'm kind of noticing like a similar thing as well. But the thing that I wanted to kind of drive the point home, it's like those things are like good kind of waves and stuff. And like, you know, people kind of come into the agency space like through those things, but it's really like to really scale up, it's like having those fundamentals down and like really like it translates to every business, right? Like every business, successful business, it's like has that brand, has like the client acquisition systems in place, like back end systems, operations, hiring, like HRs and all that kind of stuff. So it's, I find like to really, you could get in like with an AI agency and stuff, but nothing trumps like the fundamentals to scale, right? Having solid acquisition, solid brand, like all this stuff.
Yeah. And then just kind of using the guardrails to stay within the offer or the niche or the desired result.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's kind of like buying NFTs 2 years ago is like really cool,
Yeah.
but it's like not that cool. Not to hate on
Yeah.
it, but
Really interesting. You just said right now, like I just remembered like people are getting more sophisticated. I've even noticed like on sales calls as well, like I think there's like sophistication levels, like certain people like have been on so many sales calls because like so many agencies pitch them that like they already kind of have heard like the same exact script that everyone uses. And like if they pick up on that, it's just kind of like, oh, this guy's reading from a script. They've heard it like the word for word stuff, and then it becomes harder to close those people. Or they've bought agency services before, like got burned by like some guy in like his college dorm who's like running Facebook ads for the first time.
totally.
And so like the markets get sophisticated to where like you have to like kind of just be better, because like if you don't have all those different aspects of the agency, like solid offer, solid brand, solid client acquisition, solid fulfillment, solid onboarding, solid hiring processes, it's like there's gaps, and then the market will pick up on that, and you know it's not going to be good for the agency.
So true. Yeah, so many people have this pipe dream of like, oh, I'm gonna make 10K a month, and like they think it's almost like kind of scammy, is like unfortunately how the agency world can be branded, you know, and then now clients are picking up on that, and like they're getting burned, and they're smarter, and they've been on, like what you said, they've been on all these sales calls. So
I know sales calls, they pick up to all the sales tactics that are like so widely used.
That's why I think it's like also equally important, which I think served us really well as we were growing, is like establishing a good reputation, establishing a good brand, a personal brand, like as an agency owner, and putting content out there that's not just like sell, but like give, and like establish real life relationships. Like if you are serving local businesses, like go out in the community and like meet people and join the chamber, or like kind of more of like the old school stuff, to build those key relationships, because those could unlock a lot of opportunities that make sales way easier, you know?
Yeah, strong brand, like having stuff that they look at before. It's kind of like if you get a referral from someone, it's kind of like that, but you're building that online. Totally. Yeah, because they can see like different, like we use like video sales letters and like ton of like case studies, testimonials, and all that stuff, so that they can see like, yo, like these people have done it for a long time and they can get the result. Because I mean, that's all really like like really successful selling is, like a part of it is like showing that like the likelihood of success is high, right? Like you've served people just like them and have done like a good job.
For sure.
So yeah, brain helps a lot with that.
Yeah. So we hammered that pretty hard.
Yeah.
So what else? So like, what do you think? I mean, like getting to that, let's just call it like 100K mark, like 6 figures a month. Like, what do you think were some of the biggest challenges at that mark for people listening who are like, oh, like I really want to get to 100K? Like, I think that's an admirable thing. It's very challenging. Like it takes a lot of work, but there's also like different levels to it. Like, what do you think for you?
Yeah,
Was
I think definitely
required?
100K a month is for a certain type of person.
Yeah.
Because at that point, like a lot of like you're responsible for a lot. And there's so many moving parts to manage at one time. Like a lot of systems, a lot of things to get to that point. And like I think the biggest challenges at that point, like at least for ours, client acquisition like isn't an issue. Like closing at that point like is an issue. You have a solid sales process, you have a lead gen process, you have a client management process, you have operations in place. I had like an ops manager that like oversees everything. So I was pretty hands off. Like I was just like not really focused on like the client fulfillment stuff. The part that was challenging for me was like the managing of the people inside. Like you really see where like leadership, like you really start to see like how leadership matters in an organization, because you really are like the core of the agency. Like anything that you do, like your behaviors, your actions, your habits, they permeate throughout the entire agency, right? Like the way you think and the way that you operate, like everyone starts to mimic that. And so like leadership became like one thing that was like super top of mind. The other thing too was like culture. Like that's where I think maybe you had done it like ahead of me, but like I didn't really like, I wasn't so like bought into like the idea of like culture and like building that until like I see what the lack of intentional like culture setting did. Because then like there were certain expectations that were not being met and all that kind of stuff. So like culture was like a huge one, setting in place like mission, vision, principles that we abide by, like all these things in place, like employee like manuals and all that stuff, so that everyone knows like how we operate as a company. So I would say like once you get to like 100K a month, it's like the biggest challenges is like dealing with like the people problems that come in the agency and like managing people effectively. Leadership and management are like non-negotiable. Like I really learned like a ton and just like grew a ton just from like just like making the mistakes and then like learning what proper leadership and management is like.
Yeah. Yeah, totally agree. I think the 100K mark is a test of leadership for sure. And I think I remember I would always tell my coach, I would always be like, I feel like I'm just in HR. Like I feel like I'm an HR person. Like because you're dealing with people, you're dealing with personalities, you're trying to set people up for success, you're trying to think about how you communicate with people and if you're communicating correctly and dealing with problems and stuff along those lines. But I think that's where I grew the most as a leader, was like as we were in that $100,000 to $200,000 per month mark, meaning like learned like, okay, I need to set good expectations, because now any expectation is, or any frustration is simply just an unmet expectation that I fail to set as a leader from an employee handbook perspective, from a system or a standard operating procedure. And they, as an employee, are looking up to me in order to set that expectation. 100%. And if I haven't said it, then they're not going to be set for success. And the second thing was for me was learning empathy. Like me, I'm such like a driver and just like, okay, let's grind, let's go. Oh, you have emotions, like fight through it. Let's just power through. Let's just scale and grow. It doesn't work when you have a team. Like it's all about like involving people, understanding people's needs, their feelings, what they want out of life, what they want to do in the business, what they want to do to help you, how you can best support them, and really slow down as a leader and listen and account for them, versus like, you're not really, like what you said, like you weren't doing any client acquisition or closing. It's like, you're not really in like scale mode necessarily. You're more so in like okay, now it's time to feed into other people so that they can then scale the business, right? It's like, you've heard me say this, but your most important client becomes your team, becomes your employees, because they're the one that's actually going to be representing the brand. And
Yeah.
if you're feeding into them, if you're helping them grow, then they're going to serve the clients well. They're going to be bought into the mission. They're going to want to equally grow the company, which it will as a result of doing that. So that's where the leadership really comes into play, is that, yeah, like what you said, that 100K mark plus, for sure. It's
Yeah.
a different ball game, HR pretty much.
There's like levels to it too, because then like as I started to learn how to be a leader and like just really like making that, like putting in processes in place and systems and all this stuff, and like I started like getting to the point where I was starting to build others as leaders inside. Like I for like up until 50K a month, it was almost like kind of, you're just building kind of like people that are executing on like repetitive tasks and all this kind of stuff. Like they're doing like one thing, but then like at a certain point, like especially like I had a sales manager, I had an ops manager. I started like building them up as leaders so that really like I could continue to scale, because I didn't have to, I became the bottleneck because like they were waiting on me for decisions. Rather, if like I put in place frameworks and like things like culture and like principles, they already know the line of thinking that I have, so they could just make decisions without me. And then that was like super huge. Like that was like, I like took like a next level. I started like building myself as a leader, and then built other leaders, and then put them in the right places, incentivize them correctly. Like for example, like our sales manager and all that stuff, and our ops manager or client success manager, so that like as the agency scales, they also like scale with it. They also grow, so that it became like one of those things that like they retain on for longer. Like our employee retention, it's like super good. And I think it was because of like that reason there. It's like just proper leadership in place, and then like incentivizing them, and then like showing them like how their work plays into like the like plays into the whole, right? How important it is for each role. And if they see that, they're just like super bought in, and like they're pumped to, you know, to help grow the agency.
Boy. Yeah, I think there's a lot of definitions of leadership, but my real definition of leadership, as far as like when I see people, is a leader is somebody who creates other leaders. So like, I think if you're an agency owner listening, or if you're an agency and you're like making your first hire, your second hire, it's like, don't just look at them like a task doer. Communicate to them and like look for people who can eventually become a next leader, and communicate that early on, even if it's a VA, even if it's somebody who like you're doing to do a task for you right now, that you, for a role that isn't necessarily like high level, quote unquote. It's like, if you communicate to them, hey, eventually I want you to become a leader, and then you can train the next person that we're going to hire on to do the same role that you're doing. I want you to build in this company. Here's where we're going. Like that, where you get people hyped up and bought into the company. So
Yeah.
leadership,
It's like setting the vision. Cause like I know for each, I feel like all of our like management positions, like ops manager, client success, like all of them at least once or twice have been like either had been like contacted by other companies to be poached, or even for clients. Like I know my salespeople, they've like they've been like offered positions by like the same prospects that we're like reaching out to. Same thing with my ops manager, like client success manager. And they never left. Like I've never had someone leave because of like, you know, they want to go work someone else. And it was because of like all those different components like mixed together, like setting the vision, like properly incentivizing them, like properly like managing them as well. So that if someone, you know, tries to poach them, like they don't even feel like, you know, slightly even like tempted, because they know like what they have set up here is like so good, and then they see the future of it too.
Yeah. Yeah. Without a vision, the people perish. And I think that's another huge mistake that people like agency owners, especially early on, make, is they don't communicate the vision, or they don't write it down. They don't get it written down anywhere, because it's just like in their head, or they haven't really been intentional with thinking about it. They're just thinking about getting to that revenue mark or closing the next deal. It's like slowing down, creating a vision, getting people bought into the vision, and then you have the mission of getting to where you want to go. And the more people that you can get on the mission, the more likely you're actually going to achieve it. rather
Yeah,
than
100%.
one person driving the boat. What if you had 10 people on the boat on the mission to go crush whatever you want to crush? It's like 10 times more powerful.
Yeah, the agency needs to have like a North Star. Like people got to know like where
Totally.
we're going.
For sure. Otherwise, everybody's directionless. I mean, and you'll never scale, because if you're not communicating everything down, then people aren't going to be excited to work for you, and you're going to have churn, you're going to have issues, like all of that stuff.
Yeah,
Clients
I think
aren't
for
gonna
some
be
people,
happy.
it's that they like, especially if they're at 0 to 10, like they don't have yet the vision for themselves. Like they just might be doing it to like survive. And then the next level is like actually being like intentional with the vision, but then like keeping it to themselves. I know I've been there before, like where I was like very intentional about like, hey, this is exactly where I need to be. And I just never told the team about it. But it wasn't until like I told the team about it that they were like actually very receptive to it, like super like bought into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think my theory on it as well, and you could tell me your thoughts on this, but I think employees like actually like want to like they want to be bought into a vision, right? Because it's like without it, it's kind of just like boring. Like, all right, I'm just showing up, like I'm doing the same thing. Like, why? Like, you know, because their salaries are kind of like the same, unless they're like a salesperson. Like, it's kind of like the same. Like, there's this kind of consistency, which is good, right? And which is what they want. But then also like the downside to that is it's kind of like there's no excitement to that. But if you can put like a vision in there, like a mission, now there's like, you know, there's meaning and there's, you know, there's a reason why we're doing this.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I live downtown Bellevue in the city. I see people walking to work, and I can tell that when people are excited to go into work, and likely the reason that they're excited to go into work is because they have a clear vision of what they're going to do, where they're going to go at this company, what they're going to accomplish. And then you see people who are sad, who are just kind of like moping around, and it's like they haven't been communicated or fed a vision that has gotten them excited to do anything. And I think another thing with like agencies, at least myself, I'm more so talking to myself, is like imposter syndrome. Like you don't think that you can get to a certain level because you don't think that you're capable of it. Or, oh, there's no way, this is just like a trend. I close this much business or whatever it is. And it's like, I think that's why mindset as an agency owner is also equally as important, as because like if you don't think that you're going to be able to get somewhere, like you're not ever going to achieve it. And if you think that you're going to get to a 2, you're only going to be stuck at a 2 until you think that you can get to a 3, and then you're going to be stuck at a 3. And then, but if you think you can get to a 9 or a 10, then it's like, cool. Then everything else in between is just like the work, right? And if you can, like, as a human, just in general, but specifically as a business owner, start to like visualize where you want to go, where you want your business to be. And then naturally, you're going to start rewiring your brain to start to track that. And you're going to take actions in order to get to that clear vision. And you'll get over the imposter syndrome. I mean, I remember when we were scaling, I was like, this is a fad. I'm not worthy. Like, this was just a good month. Like, there's no way this is actually happening. We can't get a studio. Like, this wasn't my plan, like all of that stuff. And then I finally like sat back, and luckily I had a good partner who was like, you're like doing this, like you can do this, and had good other business owners around me who were encouraging me. And like, that's like, for me, it was the imposter syndrome that I had to get over big time, like mentally, in order to actually scale.
That's one of the things that like no one talks about. Is like when you do hit, like, I think for a lot of like people, like the experience that's like most common is like kind of hitting, like not seeing as much success with the agency or seeing a lot of failures like in the beginning. But then like when no one talks about is like when you hit like the top, right? Like seeing like 160,000 in like your Stripe app, and you're just like, what? Like never seen like this much like money coming in like a month. It like kind of like just, you know, you start to have like limiting beliefs that come up. It starts to like trigger some things that might have already been like dormant. And then that's where like, even for me, like as well, like really doing like the inner work so that like you don't like self-sabotage. Like that's why like for me, I've always like, even like when before I started my agency, like always been huge on personal development, because like the business will never grow past like the CEO. Like they need to be like constantly growing. And like I know even me and you talked about it, like, you know, for even people on our team, like making sure that they're like growing as well, because even their growth is capped at their own personal development. So I think that's one of the things that's like severely like not talked about at all in the agency space when it comes to scaling is like what's going on in like your own mind. It's like one of those things that like people don't want to like just lack talking about. It's the tactics and the strategies and like the AI this that like grabs attention, right? But it's like really like the thing going on inside of your mind, those limiting beliefs that they're actually like the true bottleneck sometimes, right? Sometimes it could just be action, but sometimes, especially as you start to scale up 50, 100K a month, 150, it's like those limiting beliefs that are in the back of your mind just like really just get amplified. And it's, if you don't like address those or have like a process for like dealing with those, it only gets like worse. And then it just like, people encounter like all sorts of different problems at that point.
For sure. Yeah, thoughts become things. Didn't you say you had a closer that like closed more deals just because he did like cold showers or something?
Yeah. So basically, like one of my closers is doing about 5K a month, like sometimes hitting 4. And he's really good. I mean, dude's probably made more cold calls and probably at this point, like more sales calls than I have. And so I was very, very confused as like why he's not closing more. Then after we kind of went deeper, kind of find out like, his main problem was just like how he's managing himself and his time. So, we started like putting in place some of the things on like how to like, have more emotional awareness, right? Like all the like boring, non-sexy stuff. And that alone, without going over any sort of like objection handling, any sort of rebuttal, like any sort of literally no sales things for like a month. We were just talking on like all these things. And like he shot up to 10K a month. And that was literally, again, like nothing sales related. I didn't even talk to him once in that whole month about anything sales related. I just basically put in place processes, which is like what we share with like the agency you guys, and I'm so passionate about. Just shared with him processes that he can do to like manage emotions, stress, like, uncertainty in life, having a way to like deal with all those things so that it doesn't seep into the sales calls, right? The sales calls, or really even business, is a reflection of the person who's like running that business or the person that's hopping onto the sales calls. So once we did that, just tweaked the person, the results started to soar.
Funny. That's dope. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, we're going to wrap this up. Thanks for tuning in. If you made it this far, I know this was kind of all over the place. Going forward, we'll be a little bit more structured with the topics. So look forward to that, as well as some guests on other agency owners. And whatever platform you're on, be sure to give it a thumbs up, rating, review. That helps other agency owners get access to it. And then also, if you're listening to this and you have a friend who's in the agency space or thinking about it or freelancing and looking to grow or scale, or maybe they're growing their agency, send this to them, because this could really help them out. And so if you're not already, follow us both on social. We'll leave everything down in the comments, in the description, whatever platform you're on. And we'll see you on the next pod. Thanks for tuning in.